faithful, for heroes proved in liberating strife. Who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America.
Romulus was a town back during the Civil War, and the 24th Michigan was a Wayne County regiment. And they were recruited in the summer of 1862. This was a farming community back then. And the first time they saw a battle was at Fredericksburg, which was the first battle after Antietam. Robert Byrd enlisted in the 24th Michigan. He was a farmer. He's wounded at Gettysburg on the first day of fighting, when the 24th Michigan went into battle with 500 guys, and that night when they took roll there were less than 100 left. So they suffered 80% casualties, the highest casualty rate of any regiment on either side of the Civil War. The 24th Michigan, when the war is over, is going to serve as an honor guard for Lincoln's coffin when it makes its way from Washington, D.C. back to Springfield, Illinois. The 24th Michigan is a very highly regarded regiment. But Robert Byrd, like I said, he was wounded at Gettysburg, I think in the arm, and his brother Peter, who we'll see in just a moment, was also wounded. And they say that Robert went back out onto the field and rescued his brother from the field. That was always kind of an iffy time. If you were wounded and you couldn't move, were you going to be captured by the other side, or were they going to come rescue you? But Robert went back onto the field to get his brother. So Robert, though, did survive the war. He and his brother both did, and they came back to Romulus. They went back to Gettysburg on one of the anniversaries of the battle, and there was a painter there, and he was painting Pickett's Charge, the big action on the third day of Gettysburg. And Robert and Peter Byrd met the painter, and he painted them into the scene, and it's this famous painting at the Gettysburg Museum. It's not actually historically accurate, though, because the 24th Michigan played no part in Pickett's Charge. But the painter met these two guys and thought that they would make good models for his painting. So Robert Byrd did survive and came back and had a family here in Romulus, and he's buried here. Come this way. The Kingsley family was originally from New York, then they moved to Ohio, and then finally to Michigan. Samuel was the youngest of three boys, Samuel, John, and Orrin. They think that house that they lived in was also possibly a stop on the Underground Railroad, along with the White Church over at 5 Points. Samuel Kingsley was the first one to enlist in the 24th Michigan in the summer of 1862, and then a few days later both of his older brothers did as well. So think about the motivations for why you would enlist. Here in the North, a lot of soldiers are going to enlist because it's a guaranteed paycheck, whereas farming is not. Maybe a sense of adventure. Maybe their younger brother did. Eventually, after the Emancipation Proclamation, more than 200,000 free African Americans on the Union side are going to enlist. And they've got a real personal stake in the Civil War. Maybe some had been slaves earlier in their lives. Some may have had family members that were still slaves. And when this is a war about slavery, a lot of them are going to jump at the chance when they're finally given that opportunity. Samuel Kingsley is going to survive the war. I believe he was wounded at Gettysburg as well. Just double check here. Yeah, he was wounded at Gettysburg. He was captured initially by the Confederates, but when Lee had to retreat, they left some of their prisoners behind, including Samuel Kingsley. He's going to come back. He's going to run kind of a store in the heart of old Romulus. He's going to serve as a township clerk and a postmaster, and he's going to be a state rep in the state government here in Michigan. Thomas Downing, right here underneath there, it says Company D, 24th Michigan Infantry, INF period. So again, Company D had a bunch of kids from Romulus in it. Thomas Downing was a little bit older when he enlisted. He was 33. He and his brother Richard both served. His brother Richard was killed during the war, but Thomas survived and came back here to Romulus as a farmer. So I should have mentioned these little markers here. It says GAR on them, and then is there a year? 1861 to 1865. So it gives the years of the Civil War. The GAR stands for Grand Army of the Republic, and it was kind of the reunion group for soldiers that served on the Union side during the Civil War. So they all joined this kind of fraternal organization after the war. And their Civil War deaths, most of them should have this GAR marker there. William Byrd, he's one of the three Byrd brothers that was from Romulus. Robert, who we started off with, and William here, and Peter here in just a moment. William was the youngest brother. He enlisted at the age of 17. How old are you guys?
13.
14?
13.
13, that's not a lot older. He dies January 28th, 1865. The war's over in early April. So he was just a couple months away from the end of the war. He dies from disease. Most of the soldiers that died during the Civil War died from disease. More than die from wounds suffered in battle. He was in the Army Corps of Engineers, so he was not in the 24th Michigan. But the Army Corps of Engineers played a vital role in the Civil War for the Union. So this is William Byrd. The first day of the fighting at Gettysburg, I believe in the thigh, and his brother Robert, the first gravesite we went to, he pulled his brother Peter off the battlefield later that evening. They didn't think he was going to survive the wounds. Somebody from Michigan was in Gettysburg after the battle, and they saw Peter Byrd there recovering, and they wrote home. They said, this is July 12th, so this is just, 10 days after the battle, 9 days after the battle. We find ourselves amid scenes only seen near a battlefield. We were shocked by the sight of Peter C. Byrd, late Wayne County Deputy Register of Deeds, lying in a feed store, shot through the thigh, but happy in the thought of restoration to friends. Alas, the doctors say he is doomed. The doctors were saying this guy wasn't going to make it. Luckily for Peter, he does make it. He's married, and you've got a picture of his wedding photograph in your packet. He ends up going to the Keweenaw Peninsula. He serves as a lighthouse keeper there. He's a school teacher. Yay, school teachers. Comes back to Romulus, builds the house that some kids think is haunted over by the airport. If you go down, we're going to drive by it, but if you go down Wayne Road at Grant, and you could only go right on Grant, but on the left is a red brick home. That was Peter Byrd's home, and he had a farm that stretched south and west of there. He came back, he started a life insurance company, Deputy Register of Deeds, started a bank here in Romulus, so he was a real mover and shaker here as well. Anybody here go to Corey Elementary School? Yeah, Reuben Corey served with the 24th Michigan, and he died during the Civil War, so that school is named after him. So the stuff that we're going to be doing over the next couple of days, you know, we're gonna get big picture on you. We're gonna go to Arlington and go to Gettysburg. But remember, this all relates to our hometown, and this Civil War was fought for us, right? It's fought to end slavery, and it's fought, as Lincoln said, to give us a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Okay, we don't have kings and queens. We have the power. So when you get older, you got to make sure that you vote. Right? Right. All right, let's get back on the bus. On your left, this house. This is the Peter Bird house. Remember, he was wounded on that first day of the fighting. They didn't think he was going to survive. His brother carried him off the field. He did survive, became a school teacher, came back to Romulus, started a life insurance company, owned a bank in town.
My name is Camilla.
What's one thing you're looking forward to on this trip?
The ghost tour and going to see the Lincoln's assassination.
Hi, my name is Devin.
What is one thing you're looking forward to?
One thing I'm looking forward to is the ghost tour in Gettysburg.
My name is Samantha Bailey and I'm excited for Gettysburg.
My name is Kylie Carter. I want to see the White House and the ghost tour of Gettysburg and the changing of the guard.
I'm Mia Rogers and I'm excited to Washington, D.C. to go the ghost walk.
My name is Ryan Spal, and the thing I'm looking forward to is going to Arlington National Cemetery.
My name is Vance Rogers, and I'm looking forward to the Lincoln Assassination Memorial.
Hi, I'm Deshane.
Hi, I'm Sydney.
And I'm looking forward to going to the Fort Theater to see where Lincoln was assassinated.
And I'm looking forward to going to the Arlington Cemetery to see all the graves and sites and stuff.
Hi, I'm Akila and I'm looking forward to see all the monuments and everything. Hi, I'm Olivia and I'm looking forward to seeing the ghost.
My name is Eric Hunt, and I'm really excited about really everything. And probably the thing I'm most excited about is going to see the White House. So that might be cool, you know. So we'll see what happens.
Hey, what's up? My name is Brian. The thing I'm most excited for is the Arlington National Cemetery, because I think I have some dead relatives there, so you know it'd be nice to see them. And yeah, that's the thing I'm most excited for. And to see Lincoln's assassination booth. So yep.
Hello, people. I'm Austin. Ask me some questions, Zach.
What are you most excited to see?
The ghost tour in Gettysburg should be interesting.
What's up, it's Zach? And the thing I'm most excited for DC is to see Arlington Cemetery and the changing of the guard.
It's Dwayne Bell. I'm looking forward to seeing the changing of the guard in the Arlington Cemetery.
Alright, I am Lamar, and I'm sort of kind of looking forward for Arlington and also eating at the Italian restaurant because I love food. And to see the Lincoln Memorial.
What are you looking forward to, Brian
I'm looking
Davis?
forward to seeing the changing of the soldiers at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and I'm also looking forward to seeing the Vietnam and Korean monument walls.
Hi, I'm Tommy McCoy. I am interested in seeing the National Archives. You can see the real Constitution and all that, and the Library of Congress, because that place is just awesome.
Hi, my name's Deja, and I'm looking forward to seeing the White House.
My name's Ellie, and I want to see the White House and the ghost tour of Gettysburg.
My name is Cheyenne Harris, and I'm excited because I want to see the Forest Theater where Lincoln was assassinated and the ghost of Gettysburg.
Hi, my name is Kennedy, and I'm ready to see the White House. Let's go, Washington, D.C.
Hey, my name's Drake Atkinson. I'm looking forward to seeing the Lincoln Memorial. Go DC.
Hi, my name's Courtney. Hi, my name's Sydney. And we're excited to see the changing of the guards in Washington.
Hey, it's Dakota, the bomb, and the thing that I'm looking forward to when we go on our way to DC is seeing the Lincoln Memorial. That's me. Bye.
Hey, it's me, Luis Garcia. We're almost on our way to Washington, but the thing I'm really looking forward to is taking the DC Metro. I'm really excited to know what it looks like.
Hi, I'm William Graves, and we're heading to DC, and I am excited to go see the National Archives place because that's where all the cool documents are.
Hi, my name is Paul Savell, and right now I'm excited about getting some food, some sleep, and seeing the change of the guard for the unknown soldier.
What am I doing anymore?
Take it off. You turned it off, right?
I think so.
I'm just saying.
There you go.
Hi, my name is Camilla Williams. The White House was built in 1797 when our first president, George Washington, selected this location. This is where our current president, Barack Obama, lives. In the White House, there are 132 rooms, 35 bathrooms, 3 elevators, and 6 levels in the residence. It is both the home of the president, his family, and a museum of American history where history continues to unfold.
Most of our tour, almost I would say 90% of our tour is going to involve the events that occurred on April 14th of 1865. But I want to give you guys a little bit of background of what led up to that day. So we'll talk about that briefly, and then again, everything's going to center on what happened on that day, that dreadful day. Now, our tour is going to start obviously here in front of the White House, and then we're going to walk our way down towards Ford's Theater, where Lincoln was shot. We'll see this house across the street where he died, and conclude about a mile down in that direction. Now, April of 1865 here in Washington, D.C., let's try and transport ourselves to that time period. So this park right here, Lafayette Square, would have been here. The Andrews Jackson statue would have been here. The White House obviously would have been here. Most of the buildings around the park would have also been here. They've changed some of them, but a lot of them are historical buildings. They're all federally owned now. But back in 1865, they were the houses, the homes of the kind of the posh, the elite socialites of Washington, D.C. So Abraham Lincoln would have known this park very well. He would have wandered around through here. You'd be familiar with a lot of the sites that we're going to be seeing. And if you look up at the White House, see the door in the very center there and the window above that center door? Y'all see that? So a lot of times Lincoln would give speeches out of that window there. So the crowd gathers right below that window there, and they're chanting speech, speech, speech. This is a big deal. And Lincoln opens the window, but he realizes that he can't just give a speech without preparing something. This is a major moment in history. So he kind of stalls, trying to figure out how he can, perhaps wait to give a speech maybe another day. And at that moment, his young son, Tad, he's 11 years old, will run out of that center door, that bottom door, run out holding a Confederate flag, running through the crowd, and the crowd's chanting, chanting, chanting. And soon Lincoln seizes this moment, and asks an orchestra band that was situated just around where we're standing now to play Dixie, which is the anthem of the Confederacy, really. And so again, Lincoln is relieved from giving a speech that night. But the next day, a crowd of about 2,000 people gathers here in Lafayette Square. And again, they're chanting speech, speech, speech. And this time, Lincoln can't get out of it, but it's okay. He's got something prepared. So he gives a speech. And it's really a policy speech in a lot of ways. It's not that long. And he speaks about, how he wants to, integrate the Confederacy, the Confederate States back into the Union, about how he's going to go about that. At one point he says, "It is also unsatisfactory to some that the elective franchise is not given to the colored man. I would myself prefer that it were now conferred on the very intelligent and on those who serve our cause as soldiers." So what he wants to do here? He wants to give voting rights to African Americans. However, this upsets a couple people in the crowd. If you guys look, there's the biggest tree just to the left of the center door there. It's the tallest one, closest to the White House. There's a couple men leaning up against that tree. And one of those men is John Wilkes Booth. And he's listening to this speech, and he hears that. And he does not like what he hears. He's already hated Lincoln. He's already planned to kidnap him about a month prior to that. And when he hears that Lincoln wants to give African Americans voting rights, that's it for him. He walks out of the park and says that is the last speech he will ever give. And that is the last speech Lincoln ever gave. A lot of people are at least somewhat familiar with the story of Lincoln's assassination. They know the name John Wilkes Booth. They know that he was shot in Ford's Theater. But it's not as widely known that Lincoln's assassination was not the only attempted assassination that night. John Wilkes Booth, you guys recognize him? Yeah. John Wilkes Booth actually plotted to decapitate the federal government. So that night, he and his accomplices decided that they would assassinate not only the president, but they would also assassinate the vice president and the secretary of state. So the three big heads of the federal government. However, things didn't go exactly as they planned. but that was the original attempt. So we're gonna meet some of those assassins, and then we're gonna talk about the Secretary of State who lived here. This isn't the original building, as you probably guessed, but this is where that house used to be located. So we know John Wilkes Booth. We'll talk a little bit more about him later, but let's also talk about his accomplices, these men here. So on the left, your left, we have Lewis Powell. He was 21 years old, very young guy. He was a big guy, very tall, very broad, and very scary. He was very intimidating. He joined the Civil War at the age of 17 and fought through it all. He was a prisoner of war at one time. He was part of the Confederate Secret Service for a while as well. And together, he and John Wilkes Booth and this man named Davy Harold, 26 years old, not as scary as Lewis Powell, very smaller man and not that clever. The three of them, as well as one other man we'll soon meet, plotted in March of 1865 to not assassinate the president, but to kidnap him. They attempted to do this March 17th of 1865. However, Lincoln, they were told he was going down one route here in Washington, D.C. At the last minute, changed his mind, decided to go somewhere else, and the kidnapping plan was foiled. So after listening to that speech, John Wilkes Booth, Davy Harold, and Lewis Powell got together and decided that instead of kidnapping the president, they needed to do something much more drastic. They needed to assassinate him. And not just him, but the Secretary of State, William H. Seward, who lived here, as well as Vice President Andrew Johnson. And we'll find out more about him in a little bit. But Seward, who was living here, was the easiest target of the night. It would be pretty simple to assassinate him. This is what Seward looked like. And the reason he was so easy to assassinate is because there was no question as to where he would be. Everyone knew he was stuck in this house. Why? On April 9th, a few days earlier, he had gotten into a terrible carriage accident, had nearly been killed. You see, one of the wheels on the carriage had broken, and he had been flung from the carriage onto the ground there, breaking his neck, breaking his jaw, all sorts of terrible stuff. So everyone knew that he was stuck in the house getting treatment for that. So it was decided by John Wilkes Booth that Lewis Powell, this guy, would be responsible for assassinating Seward. He wanted to do this. He was very much involved. He called John Wilkes Booth his master. He was committed to this plan. And it was then decided that that Davy Harold would be the man, not to do any killing himself, but because he was from Maryland and knew the area very well, he would escort Powell from the house and help them flee into the countryside there, give them directions and whatnot. If you guys go to Ford Theater tomorrow, you'll be able to see this gun in the museum. John Wilkes Booth, I told you he was a man for the dramatic. He wanted to use this gun, which only again had one single shot, because he wanted, the effects of the drama of that. He only had one chance, one opportunity to assassinate the president. If things went wrong, it wasn't going to happen. He wanted that dramatic effect. So he puts one hand into his pocket, pulls out the Derringer pistol in his right hand, puts his left hand in his pocket, pulls out a large knife in the other. And when this funny line is delivered, he lifts up that gun, he aims it at Abraham Lincoln, and fires. The bullet enters through just behind Abraham Lincoln's left ear and lodges itself right behind his right eye. One arm kind of raises up, he slumps over, and leans forward in his chair. Now the shot does not kill Lincoln instantly. He's completely unconscious, obviously. He'll never speak another word, but he's not dead. Now, John Wilkes Booth immediately has to deal with Rathbone. Rathbone, he was Major Rathbone, he's been in the war. He knew what a pistol, what a gun being fired sounded like. He then saw this smoke filling the presidential box there. So he immediately charges toward John Wilkes Booth, and that's when John Wilkes Booth will raise up that knife and slice Major Rathbone. From there, John Wilkes Booth jumps from the presidential box onto the stage, but his foot gets stuck in the flag that had been hanging to decorate the box, and he stumbles, and when he lands, raises up this bloody knife that he had used to slice Major Rathbone, and he utters 3 words. Does anyone know what those words were? Sic semper tyrannis. What does that mean?
I did.
Thus always to tyrants. It's the Virginia state motto, and now it'll be a long night. Lincoln will survive through the night. His wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, will come back and forth through the room, bursting out into tears, shrieks and wails every time she sees her husband. William Stanton, the tough, hard Secretary of War, will tell Mary Todd Lincoln that she needs to be taken away. She cannot see her husband anymore. But he too is sitting by the president, tears running down his eyes. Robert Todd Lincoln, his son, has come to Peterson's boarding house here also to sit with the president. And at 7:22 a.m. on the morning of April 15, 1865, Lincoln takes his last breath and then passes away.
You have to be qualified to be buried in the Arlington Cemetery. Now, I am a former Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine. I served 4 years.
Thank you.
And so, you're welcome. And so, I am qualified to be buried in a national cemetery. The government will pay for it. Everything except for my casket and all the preliminary funeral arrangements, okay? But, I am not qualified to be buried in Arlington. Because when you are qualified to be buried, in order to be qualified to be buried in Arlington, you have to have either served in the military for 20 years and discharged honorably with high honors, such as Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Medal of Honor, etc. Okay? Or you have to have served your country in a high capacity, such as President, Supreme Court Justice, Congressman, Department of Commerce head or something like that, okay? Then you're qualified to be buried here. When you're qualified to be buried here, also your immediate family is allowed to be buried here, namely your wife and your children up until the age of 18. So as long as they're minors, they're allowed to be buried here. But once they turn past 18, then they're no longer qualified, okay? But let's say you had a wife and 3 children. Okay, it used to be they'd bury you side by side. But because the cemetery is running out of space, now they bury you stacked. So if you got 3 children and a wife and you, that grave's gonna be pretty deep. Okay? So if you look on the front of the headstone, you see the name of the service member. On the back, you might see his wife or his children. Sometimes the wife's name is up under the husband or vice versa. And nowadays, a lot of women serve in the military. Some of them have died in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. So then they would be the primary member and their husband would be allowed to be buried with them along with their children up until age 18, okay? So on the back you'll see a number, and that number allows you to designate in a computer database system where the grave is located so that a family member can find it, as well as the names that are on the front and the back. You'll see symbols for just about every religion that there is. There's supposed to be even one for atheism, although I've never seen it and don't know what it looks like. You will go throughout the cemetery and you will see a lot of headstones with rocks on top of them. And that is from a Jewish tradition set from a long time ago. You know how, like, you and I were to die, you put flowers on the grave site? Well, back then, they would put rocks in the place of flowers. So that's what you'll see, a Jewish tradition. But now, a lot of people have started doing it besides Jewish. You also see coins at some of the Kennedy grave sites, okay? Now, I stopped you here. This is called Justice Hill, okay? And that's because the Supreme Court justices are qualified to be buried here. And if their family members, or if it's in their will, they like to be buried here, they're allowed to be buried in this section. So I'm going to take you and show you where the justices are buried, including the first African-American Supreme Court justice. Who was he? Who was he?
She said it over here.
Oh. What's that? Okay, students only. Yeah. We don't want to help them. you guys should know this. Because a lot of the rights that you enjoy right now, this man fought for and won. For instance, you see your group, you're a diverse group. It's white, it's black, and in some groups there's Asian, Hispanic. Thurgood Marshall is the reason that is allowed to be. Because he fought in a Supreme Court case, Brown versus the Board of Education, okay? Before that, we used to be separated by cultures as to our education. Now we can be educated together.
Hi, my name is Akil and I'm at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. The tomb contains the remains of soldiers from World War I, World War II, and the Korean conflict, also the Vietnam War. The tomb is guarded 24 hours a day, 365 days a year by specially trained guards of the United States Infantry. Here it rests in August glory. An American soldier known but to God is the inscription on the tomb. In a few moments you'll see the changing of the guards.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? I am Sergeant Vincent, the 3rd Infantry Regiment, United States Army, Guard of Honor, Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. The ceremony that you are about to witness is the changing of the guard. In keeping with the dignity of this ceremony, it is requested that everyone remain silent and standing. Thank you.
the Kennedy gravesite, and behind me is the eternal flame. President Kennedy was assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald. The state funeral took place in Washington, D.C. during the 3 days that followed his assassination. Sunday after the assassination, his coffin was carried on a horse-drawn carriage to the U.S. Capitol to lie in state. Throughout the day and night, hundreds of thousands lined up to view the guarded casket. Representatives from over 90 countries attended the state funeral on Monday, November 25th. But right now, it's under renovation, so we can't see the flame. It was built in 1800, founded by John Adams. He spent $5,000 on books he thought was good for Congress. More than 40 artists created statues. Now the collection consists of more than 32 million cataloged books in 470 languages, 62 million manuscripts, a rough draft of the Declaration of Independence, and the first draft of the Emancipation Proclamation in Gettysburg Address. One of 4 perfect vellum copies of the Gutenberg Bible known to exist is also here. The book collection of the library was destroyed twice in 1814 and 1851. The dome was plated with 23-karat gold. The Library of Congress is the largest library in the world.
Arithmetic question. If the library opened 1800, how old is it this year? Yes. 213 years old, one of the oldest intellectual institutions in our country. Functioned very well for the first 3 years until we come to 1812. What happened in 1812? Somebody else. Well, there was a war first. There was the War of 1812. And after 2 years of battles with the British, in 1814, the British arrived here. They occupied all the government buildings in the capital. It was a mixture. British soldiers, British sailors, there was a British general and a British admiral. That British admiral took charge. He jumped up on a desk and he yelled out, "Whoever wants to burn down this Yankee building, yell aye," and they immediately screamed out, "Aye, aye, sir." Anybody who doesn't want to burn it down, say nay. Silence. Okay, yells the admiral, "Find us fuel." Where were they standing? In front of the library. British soldiers, British sailors running in, grabbing books, documents, newspapers, whatever they could find, tearing them up, stacking them in the middle of our capital, set fire to the building using everything that was in the library, everything burnt except one book. That British admiral wanted a souvenir and he grabbed one book before it was burned. I like to trace that book. The years go by and we come to 1940. Great Britain is fighting Germany alone in World War II. The United States is not yet in the war, but we're helping Great Britain. We're sending them arms, ammunition, and in order to maintain our friendship, what do? They return that book to us. So 1940, that one book that survived that war is returned. You know how many we now have? They have grown to 33 million books. To give you an idea of 33 million, we've measured the shelf space, about 650 miles. Go that distance from where you live. That'll give you a better idea of what 33 million is. In addition to books, we've got non-books, like manuscripts, pictures, photographs, maps, movies. This goes on and on. When you add up all the other things that are non-books, we then have 151 million different items. Staggers the imagination. One little library that was just for the members of Congress is now the largest library in the world. We now have 12 buildings scattered all around the area. We have one building that's only for the blind and the handicapped. It's a special building which makes books audio or braille for the blind and physically handicapped. Physically handicapped is described as you can't use your hands, so you can listen to the audiobooks. We pay famous actors to read the books. We make them and we distribute them free to anybody who needs them.
Hi, I'm Emily Dola. Behind me is the U.S. Capitol building. This is where the House of Representatives and the Senate makes our laws for the United States. The Capitol building was built after Thomas Jefferson laid a competition to elect some of the finest architects of America. The Capitol building also has its own subway that runs underneath it. And even George Washington himself laid the cornerstone for the Capitol building 220 years ago.
Cheyenne Harrison. I'm standing in front of Forest Theater. This so happens to be the same place where Abraham Lincoln, our 16th president, was assassinated. This event happened on Good Friday, April 14th, 1865. John Wilkes Booth snuck behind Lincoln and shot him. Unfortunately, no one could save him, and he later died from his wounds. The plan was to also kill Vice President Andrew Jackson and Secretary of State William Seward. Seward survived in attacking his home, and Jackson was unharmed. Wilkes Booth was later killed while on the run. His 4 co-conspirators were caught and hung. The theater reopened in 1868 and is now a working theater. Lincoln's legacy still lives on.
Hi, my name is William Graves, and we are here at the on Pennsylvania Avenue between 7th and 9th Street at the National Archives building in Washington, D.C. with Mr. McCabe's class. We are here visiting to see the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and other extraordinary historic documents that the United States has had. We are just now visiting the place. So far, I've seen women's voting rights, Louisiana Purchase document, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. There's a whole bunch of the 10 amendments, and it's awesome.
I'm Tommy McCoy, and this is the Lincoln Memorial honoring the 16th President of the United States. It is 204 feet long, 134 feet wide, and 99 feet tall. On this gigantic statue it says, "In the temple as in the hearts of the people whom he saved in the Union, the memory of Abraham Lincoln is enshrined forever." This is a tribute to Abraham Lincoln's legacy of peace and equality. Also, as an honor to his legacy, both his Gettysburg Address and his second inaugural speech are written on the inner walls of the monument.
Hi, my name is Vance Rogers, and I am in front of the Vietnam Wall. During the war, there was over 58,000 American casualties. From both sides, there were over 1 million. But over the years, the wall has been said to be a place of healing and a place to honor all the names that are on this wall. Thank you.
The Korean War Memorial was built to honor those who had lost their lives in the Korean conflict. On my left is a wall of encryption where they took actual photos of the platoons that had fought in the war and used laser encryption to put their faces and figures onto the wall. On the right are 19 stone or statue soldiers which represent a squad on patrol. Now, these soldiers are larger than life size and represent various branches of the military. The memorial itself represents a triangular shape, and on one of the tips it has a pool of remembrance. The pool of remembrance has those who had lost their lives, are missing in action, or taken prisoners of war during the Korean conflict.
Hello, it's me, Luis Garcia. Behind me here is the Martin Luther King Memorial. If you know of him, you remember that on August 28, 1963, he gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. He created this speech because he wanted to end segregation, and this showed to the people how important it was to end the problem. This statue was built on August 28, 2011 in honor of the 48th anniversary. It stands 30 feet tall, and if you go through the Mountain of Despair, you get a perfect view of it.
Hi, I'm Sydney. We're at the Franklin D. Roosevelt Memorial. This honors Franklin Roosevelt for leading the United States through the Great Depression and through the World War II. This park-like memorial is 7 acres and has 4 outdoor gallery rooms. This memorial includes the bronze sculptures of President Roosevelt and his wife Eleanor Roosevelt. He was the only president to serve 4 terms, and he had polio, so he had to sit in a wheelchair.
My name is Joel Buznitz. I'm a licensed battlefield guide here in Gettysburg. I'd like to welcome you guys to the national park here in town. Thankfully, you all made it here eventually, right? Had a bit of a bus issue. If it breaks down during the tour, we'll just simply walk perhaps 2 to 3 miles and come back here to the visitor center. So if worst comes to, no, I'm just kidding. All right. Have you guys, what grade do we have? 8th graders?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you guys been studying the American Civil War at all?
Yes.
And how far along have you gotten?
Pretty much Gettysburg.
We got to like
The end of Gettysburg.
End of Gettysburg.
The end of Gettysburg. Okay, so we know who won the battle?
Yeah.
All right, who won the battle? Union. Right, we're going to find out why they won, how they were successful here during this battle throughout our 3-hour tour. We're going to get off the bus a few times and I'll kind of take you around and show you what kind of ground these guys fought over. It's a much more effective way to see the battlefield if you're off the bus and walking the ground these men fought around for 3 days in July. So yeah, the American Civil War took place about 150 years ago, from 1861 to 1865, and the Battle of Gettysburg would occur approximately in the middle of the whole conflict in the first 3 days of July of 1863. All right, so this war still went on for almost 2 more years before the South was finally forced to surrender. And at that point in time, over 600,000 Americans had lost their lives. All right, that's about 2% of the American population back then. If that would happen nowadays, it would be about 7 million Americans. All right, so in other words, everybody knew someone that had died during this war, whether it was your friend, your brother, somebody lived down the street from you. So it's a very personal war, both North and South. The Battle of Gettysburg would become the largest battle fought of the entire war in terms of how many men were here. In the course of 3 days of combat, 170,000 soldiers were in and around the town of Gettysburg as well as the surrounding countryside. And when it was all said and done, about 51,000 were casualties. Casualties are guys that were killed, wounded, captured, missing. So about 1 in 3 that fought this battle would either get hit by a bullet or an artillery shell or end up getting captured. So those odds, were not very good back then of survival. Hard to imagine that happening nowadays with the way battles are fought, but back then they just lined up shoulder to shoulder, and in certain cases they would be 50 to perhaps 100 yards away and just start blasting away at each other, which we'll see here in one of our first stops of the tour, actually. So that's where a lot of the casualties come from. And not only that, the kind of ammunition, let me go left hand turn here, the kind of ammunition they used back then was just devastating to the human body. The bullets were made of lead, they were very heavy, and when the bullet would strike the body, it wouldn't just, stop moving. It would kind of flatten out and zigzag its way and break about every bone it possibly could, which is what led to so many amputations and things like that. Here at Gettysburg, after this battle was done, the scene around the countryside was absolutely horrific. Ultimately, each Union regiment that fought here at Gettysburg would receive its own monument. Gettysburg is the most monumented battlefield in the world. There's about 1,350 monuments on this battlefield today. So everywhere you look, you're going to see a monument to something. And because we are in Pennsylvania and the North wins the war, almost all of these monuments are for Union regiments or for Union commanders that fought here at this battle. The South is not well represented. Those that have been placed here, like the North Carolina monument, that was placed here back in 1985. So it was an entire 100 years after this was placed here. It tells you kind of the negativity and the animosity that exists for a very long time between North and South, even after the war. If you were a Union veteran that was part of the 24th Michigan, would you want to allow the Confederates to come back up here and place monuments on your battlefield where they had been shooting at your guys? No, I wouldn't either. That's why you don't see very many Confederate monuments even 150 years later. So that's kind of the story here. We'll see a few of them. That's one example right there. Ultimately, each state that fought here for the South would receive its own state monument, but that really wouldn't start happening until a little after the beginning of the 20th century. In this area right here, you have to imagine about 170,000 men and 70 to 80,000 horses. Horses oftentimes overlooked at a battle like this, but each one of these cannons essentially had 12 horses attached to it. There were 650 cannon here at this battle. If you factor in cavalry, officers on horseback, ammunition wagons, supply wagons, ambulance wagons, like I said, 70,000 to 80,000 horses. And for the final 2 days of this battle, in about a 3-4 square mile radius, all those men, all those horses were packed in here like essentially sardines. Not a lot of area to move around. Hard to imagine once again nowadays. That's why this battlefield's so huge, because we had huge numbers here of men and horses. Off to the other side, again, mountain range, South Mountains out there in that area. That is where the Confederates have been coming from when this battle began, and they will maneuver their way down to the south, trying to get on the flank. Ultimately, that would bring the Round Top. So we're going to head down to Little and Big Round Top next.
Joel,
so you
just
can get
a
off
quick
this
question while we're
dangerous
up here.
position. Yes, sir.
Distance-wise, could a cannon up on Little Round Top be
Absolutely.
this far? Okay.
Yeah, there were cannons actually on July 3rd on top of Little Round Top that were firing shells to the left of where you see, not the red barn here, but you see where that two-tone house is?
Yeah.
There's a red barn and there's one after that behind the trees right here into that field to the left of it. That's about 1.5 miles.
Okay.
And we'll talk about cannon fire once we get to a different part of the battle. If you look at the mouth of the cannon, in front of it, there'd also be other markings that say oftentimes how much it weighs, where it was produced, what number was going out the assembly line, things like that. This cannon right here is known as a 10-pound Parrott, named after the inventor Robert Parrott, who invented the Parrott rifle. The 10 pounds is how much the actual shell would weigh. And the key here is that there is, if you look at the mouth of the cannon, once again, there's rifling inside the barrel. Kind of looks like a barber pole or a spiral staircase, essentially. And that would kind of spin the shell inside the barrel and get it going at a very high velocity, so it's accurate from very close to 2 miles away. If you look out there to where there's a red barn with the 3 white spires, that's about 1.5 miles from here. On July 3rd, during Pickett's charge, the cannons that were up here were actually able to fire 1.5 miles all the way out there and crash that round shot right into the right flank of Pickett's line. This area right here is known as Devil's Den. Why do you think it was called that?
You go rock for me to kill.
Actually, the story started before the Civil War. On a nice day like today, the Gettysburg civilians would come down here to try to have a picnic, but there was always an elusive rattlesnake that always ruined their picnic.
Wait, what?
A big, gigantic rattlesnake would slither through here, and it would mess up their picnic. They always tried to capture him and kill him, but they could never get him. And right here was his den. So this area here is known as, they nicknamed the snake the Devil. They called this his den, and the name kind of stuck. Devil's Den. We're right.
Say the president. I ain't trying to break no neck.
407 years ago,
Our fathers brought forth from this continent a new nation,
conceived in liberty,
and dedicated to the proposition
that all men are created equal.
Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on that great battlefield of the war.
we have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place.
for those who are here gave their lives,
that nation that might live.
It is altogether fitting and proper
That we should do this.
But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate.
We cannot concentrate.
We cannot hollow these grounds.
the brave men living and dead who struggle here.
Have consecrated it above our poor power.
To add or detract.
The world will little know nor long remember.
We say here.
But it can never forget what they did here.
It is for us to leave rather.
To be dedicated here to the unfinished work, which they who fought here
Have thus so far nobly advanced.
It is rather for us to be here dedicated
To the great task that remains before us.
that from these honored dead we take in peace devotion.
To that cause which they gave last full measure devotion.
That we here highly resolve
that these dead shall not have died in vain,
That this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom. And that government of the people.
By the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Oh, beautiful, for heroes proved in liberating strife. Who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, make God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and ever again divine. And you know, when I was in school, we used to sing it something like this. Listen here. Oh, beautiful, far spacious skies, far amber.